I am genuinely terrified of winning the lottery. And once I explain why, you will be too. We all want our life to be as fantastic as possible for as long as possible. Yet we chase this version of a lottery, this short-lived period of feeling extremely good, only to find out it makes us feel miserable for a really long time. But there's another way to make your life feel even better than a lottery. And unlike the lottery, this is completely within your control. It's how I've gone and lived the best year of my life 5 years in a row. The answer revolves around this idea that trajectory is better than position. Chris Williamson had this great quote where he said, "It's better to be 150th in the world if last year you were 250th, compared to being ranked number second if last year you were first. It's all about trajectory, where you're heading, not your actual position in the ranking." This really resonated with me and I wanted to ask myself why. And it's because the last 5 years of my life have all been the best ever. It's been making small, consistent improvements to my life, these incremental changes, rather than this big spike of one lottery hit. Now, I've experienced this feeling of winning the lottery on a smaller scale. Back when I was running an e-commerce brand, I entered a competition and won this marketing prize. And temporarily my sales shot up and I was up on the rankings. But it was temporary, it didn't last long, and pretty soon my trajectory was downhill and I was falling down the rankings. This felt like shit, because I went from being a degenerate, borderline alcoholic uni student to a functioning member of society with a full-time job. And then I added in a side hustle, a camper van rental business. And then I added in running a marathon a month. And then I was able to quit my job and go full-time on the business. And now I'm a digital nomad and I've just been living 2 months in Buenos Aires, Mexico City, and now Colombia. It honestly just feels like my life has been getting better and better over the past 5 years. And the key word there being feels. This all comes back to subjective experience. How do you feel about the life you're living? What's it like on the day-to-day? It's why trajectory is so much more important than position, because the feeling of improvement is better and lasts longer than just the feeling of being the best. And it's why I see winning the lottery as a curse. You skip all of the enjoyment that you get from the incremental progress of making it to the top. If you know you're going to make it to the top of the mountain, then why would you just want to teleport there? Wouldn't you want to enjoy all of the views as you climb the mountain, it getting slowly better and better as you get higher and higher? Rather than getting the view at the top and then having to walk down the mountain and your view just getting worse and worse. Your experience of that, despite being the same, getting to the top of the mountain, your experience of that process is so much better if you're have a positive trajectory and you're making incremental progress. Your view's getting better and better. So if we were going to visualize it, it might look something like this. We could have a graph, and on the x-axis we could have time. Just time progressing, passing from left to right. And on the y-axis, we have feeling, which is like your experience of life. How good does it feel on the day-to-day? How do you subjectively interpret what your day-to-day life is? The entire idea of trajectory over position is anchored to what your baseline is, this dotted line. If something bad happens, then your feeling is going to be negative. You're going to draw a line down. That might last for a little bit and then you'll probably return to baseline. Overall, that's been a negative experience. And the inverse of that is true for a positive experience. If something good happens, you'll go above your baseline, feel good for a little while, and then you'll probably return. But it's all anchored to the baseline. How do you feel subjectively according to this baseline? If we move it up, then we can see that this experience, the exact same level, is now a negative one in reference to the new baseline. We've turned a positive experience into a negative one just by improving the baseline. Okay, so let's play out what it looks like if you win the lottery. So you're probably just ebbing and flowing positive and negative experiences along your baseline. And then you have this winning the lottery event, this giant spike that raises up, way up above the baseline, and it's really steep curve. There's not much time in which you get to enjoy the increase. It's a very sharp increase. And then you reset your baseline at this new level. You've had this great thing happen, and now for anything to be positive above that, it has to cross past this threshold. Now, is something better than winning the lottery about to happen? Probably not. And so you've reset this baseline really high, and now you have a long and slow decline from the baseline of negative experience. So we have this short period where we won the lottery, where we feel really good in green. And then we have this long, slow, getting even bigger negative period in red, in which we feel terrible in relation to our new baseline. Now, if we're measuring our subjective experience as the area under these graphs, then there's more red than there is green. It's overall going to be a negative experience. And as time progresses, there's only going to be more and more negative feelings as you get further away from the baseline. But now let's reset the graph and see what it looks like if you focus on trajectory and you avoid this winning the lottery moment. You're going to start making a little bit of progress. And then you'll continue making a little bit more. And then you'll get to this point where you've made a lot of progress and you'll be like, wow, my life is amazing. But you've been doing it long enough that you're like, okay, this is now just my acceptable baseline. My baseline has moved up with how good my life is now. But the great thing is you're on a positive trajectory, so you can just keep this momentum going and keep improving up and up. Now, of course, bad things can happen. Not everything is within your control. You can have these dips. But importantly, this dip is still above the relative baseline. It's still overall a positive experience. And the great thing is with all this history of the positive trajectory, you can usually get back on track pretty fast and continue improving. Now, if we measure the positive and negative experiences of this graph, you can see there's way more green and there's almost there is no red. It's because it's all positive trajectory. You're resetting your baseline and then you continue improving. You're always on the up. When we compare it back to winning the lottery, there's all of this negative emotion, all of this association decreasing from the baseline of these negative experiences. And what makes this even worse is that as humans, we're always trying to predict into the future. We're always trying to think about what's coming next. What's my life going to look like? And if we play that out with this graph, we can see that your trajectory is negative, it's going down. So if you're thinking into the future and thinking, what's my life gonna look like? You're gonna think it's gonna keep getting worse and worse, and it's gonna be a pretty negative outlook on life. Now, if we look at the other graph, you're on a positive trajectory, you're improving. And so your projection is gonna follow that line. You're able to look into the future and think, okay, my life is getting better. Everything is gonna keep improving. This is why trajectory is so much more important than position. You know that you're heading in a positive direction. You know that you're going to enjoy the process. You're going to keep making incremental improvements. This hit hard for me this year in April when it was my birthday. I'd been living in Buenos Aires as a digital nomad for 2 months, and I was absolutely loving the day-to-day. The routine was so dialed, and I was just having so much enjoyment of every waking moment. The morning routine, the breakfast, getting some deep work done on the business, exercising, and then exploring the city in the afternoons. That on the day of my birthday, I woke up and I genuinely didn't want anything to change. And so it didn't. I had the exact same breakfast, the same morning routine, still got work done on the business. Now, I'd run a marathon the day before, so I didn't really need to exercise that today. It was a rest day. But then all I did was spend a bit more money on my exploring the city in the afternoon. I went to the best steakhouse in the world and I went and did an escape room with my best friend. But ultimately, I didn't really want much to change. And it's because I was on this upward trajectory. I knew that I was making progress and every day I was getting a little bit better. And so I was able to just feel so fulfilled and enjoy all of the moments of the day so much more. Despite not having achieved the goals and ambitions that I'd set for myself, my subjective experience of my life was better than it had ever been. And that's the reality of setting and achieving goals. Achieving the goal lasts a moment. You really live in the process of making the progress towards your goal. Just listen to Scotty Scheffler talk after he won one of the most prestigious golf tournaments in the world. He says, yeah, this is great. It's an amazing feeling, but it lasts about 2 minutes. And then everyone, including himself, only cares about what's coming next. All his questions are how you're going to perform at the next tournament. All of your time and your subjective experience of life is in the process of achieving your goals, in the progress that gets made along the way. Then we hit the goal and we quickly move the goalpost so that we can keep progressing and making progress. That's why it's so much more important to be focusing on having a positive trajectory rather than what rank you are. And to be honest, the idea of moving your goalpost once you've achieved a goal is something that I'm happy to come to terms with because I know I have a positive trajectory. I've optimized for enjoying the process and being on this upward spiral. Okay, so I can hand on heart say that each of the 5 years has been the best that I've ever experienced. So how did I do it? The reality is just consistency and tracking. If the goal is to have this positive trajectory, then you always want to be making a little bit of progress. And that's so much easier when you're consistent. The first thing you need to do is prove to yourself that you can be consistent. You need to take the smallest manageable task that you can 1000% do and prove to yourself that you can do that again and again to build the trait of consistency within yourself. The steepness of your trajectory, this improving your life curve, will only get faster and better when you build this trait of consistency, much faster than if you bite off more than you can chew and then you're inconsistent. For me right now on the day-to-day, this looks like doing 4.5 hours of deep work, getting a workout or a run in, tracking all my food, and getting at least 9 hours in bed. But it didn't start this way. I started with what was manageable and stacked it up bit by bit. First, it was 30 minutes of work a day, and then I built it up. It was exercising 3 times a week and running once, and then I built it up. It was just hitting my protein target for the day, and then I built it up. It was aiming for 7 hours in bed, and then I built it up. That is what allowed me to build the proof, to be able to stand here and say that I'm a consistent person, and really just prove it to myself. Secondly, none of this is really possible if you're not tracking. By tracking, you give yourself the data to be able to make decisions on what's increasing, and you can actually see the progress that you're making in retrospect. When you're consistent and you start tracking, you can prove that your trajectory is on an incline. I track my deep work in a spreadsheet so I know how much work I'm doing each day and if it's improving or not. I track my lifts on a spreadsheet so I know if my weight or my reps are going up. I track my running on my watch so I can see my pace and my distance improving. I track all of my food in Chronometer so that I can see all of my macros being hit and the macro split that I'm getting. I track my sleep in my watch so I know when I'm spending more time in bed or when I'm being more efficient in my sleep, getting more deep in REM. This all creates a feedback loop so that I can keep my trajectory positive. I can look back and say, here's all the proof that I am progressing, that I'm on a positive trajectory. And I can make small adjustments to maintain the trajectory that I want and enjoy the experience of being on the incline. This isn't to say that you need to go buy a smartwatch and create a bunch of spreadsheets and track all the things that I do. We probably have different goals for our lives, but what I do think we have in common is we both want to enjoy our life. And what I do know is that you'll enjoy your life more if you're making consistent incremental progress with consistency and tracking, more so than if you won the lottery, because your trajectory will be on the rise. So if you like the idea of realizing more of your potential and being able to actualize it with this upward trajectory, becoming a better version of yourself, then stick around because you're in the right place.